Oh yeah. There we go. Oh yeah. Oh, there we go. Woo. Woo. Wait. Oh, there we go. All right. I think we're warm enough now. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. If you've been following anything related to EOS R5 and R6, you have probably seen that they have overheating issues. And with how cold it's been the last 2 days, you know, we went from 91 degrees on Monday to about 55 yesterday. It's gotten pretty chilly. It was snowing yesterday. It was straight up snowing. In like the beginning of September, snowing. Anyhow, so we've got the R6 here. And we're going to do a little bit of a test. Now I've been running some tests with my EOS ADD, and we're going to mirror some of those with the R6, and we're also going to apply the new firmware update that was dropped today by Canon, firmware version 1.1.1, and we're going to compare them some and see just how temperatures are holding out, how long we can record. And with the R6, we're basically going to be maxing it out. So we're going to go ahead and record 4K at 120 frames a second in 10-bit. And we're basically just going to see how long it goes for before it calls it quits. So let's jump in and let's look at some numbers. Alright, so we've got the first test done here on the R6. We've got it updating right now to the latest firmware. So we shot in 4K at 60 frames a second, 10-bit C-Log, and we got just about what the Canon website says you should expect. We got, so they say 30 minutes, and we got just shy of 29 minutes, which isn't bad. Now the body is warm. I will note there is some heat. I haven't checked yet what temperature the camera says that it's at. I'm going to go ahead and do the update. We're going to let it rest. We're going to let it cool back down so that we can do another one with the new firmware and see just how much longer it goes. But I think it is interesting to note that, I mean, the body, it's already cooling down a bit, especially with my hands on it, but it is warm. It's not uncomfortable by any means, but you can tell that the camera body has heated up. So let's give this a few minutes to finish updating here. We're at 87%, and let's let it sit for a while, let it cool back down, and we'll do it again. Alright guys, so we've completed round 2. We definitely got quite a bit more time with the new firmware update. Now I did stop the recording early. I stopped at about 46 minutes because I wanted to try to take a temperature reading. Just snap a photo real quick. We'll open it up. We'll see what temperatures it shows. But it looked like it would have just kept on rolling. Now once I stopped it, it would not let me resume. Now that it sat for a few minutes, it's saying that it can go for another 10 minutes is what it's telling me. It could probably go for longer. So I don't know what the ultimate length would be. I'm not entirely wanting to push it because, once again, the body was quite warm. It was definitely a bit warmer than the last time since it had ran for longer. But, that is a 50% increase, which is, that's fair. The 45 minutes compared to the 30 minutes before, well, 46 minutes. we've got a 50% increase in recording time. It probably goes quite a bit longer. I think if I do one more test, what I want to do is I want to put it into 1080p at the 120 frames a second and just let it roll and see how long it'll roll for. Alright guys, so let's take a look and compare some of the data that we have here. First off, let's take a look at the EOS ADD. So we did a test indoor and then 2 outdoor. So the first one indoor, it was about 75 degrees or 24 degrees Celsius inside the apartment. And we recorded just until until we hit our record limit. So about 30 minutes. The start temperature that we recorded was at about 28 degrees Celsius. Now, these temperatures, these start and end temperatures for the ADD, these values were taken from EXIF data from shots that I took before recording and after recording. So this is what the camera's internal sensors are recording for us. So our start temperature was 28 degrees Celsius and our end temperature after 30 minutes of recording at all-eye 1080p 24 frames a second was 44 degrees Celsius. I then stuck the camera outdoors. It was about 95 degrees outside or 34 degrees Celsius. We recorded again for 30 minutes, so until it ended. The start temperature was noticeably warmer. Now the camera had been sitting in my car for quite some time previous to this, so it's not surprising that the start temperature is so much higher. The end temperature is what starts getting a little bit interesting here. The end temperature was 54 degrees Celsius. And then again, we did another one outdoors. It was 35 degrees Celsius outside. We got close to our record time. I think I ran out of space on my card. I think that's part of why we didn't hit 30. But our start temperature was 40 degrees Celsius and our end temperature was 63 degrees Celsius. Now, something interesting to note here is that our ADD got all the way up to 63 degrees Celsius, but at no point did it complain about heat. And this is one of the things that I begin to find confusing about the EOS R5 and R6 versus some other cameras. Because if we look at our EOS R6, we have ambient temperatures that were very similar to our indoor test for our ADD. So we did firmware 1.0 first, and we recorded for almost 30 minutes. Now, the ambient temperature was a little bit above what Canon has on their website, that you should be able to make 30 minutes. It was just a few degrees. Our start temperature, which for the EOS R, we actually pulled these temperatures from the video files themselves. I didn't snap pictures beforehand, so this is just pulled from the video file, which I think might just be a running average for the whole time that the video runs for. But we had a start temperature of, let's just say 38, and our end temperature was 55 degrees Celsius. Now at that point, the camera is complaining that it's overheating, even though on our ADD we reach 54 degrees Celsius and the thing's more than happy to just keep on plowing on. Now, I will note that although the ADD says that it got up to 54, at no point did I notice the body to be as warm as I found the EOS R6's body to be. Now, upgrading to firmware version 1.1.1, we did the same test. It was just, about an hour later probably. Again, same ambient temperature. We had 77 degrees in the apartment, so about 24, 25 degrees Celsius. We recorded for 46 minutes, almost 47 minutes. Now, I stopped the recording early so that I could get a temperature reading. The camera was complaining about overheating, but had not stopped yet. So I'm confident that we could have recorded for probably a bit longer. But our start temperature, it registered somewhere around 29 degrees Celsius. I find that much more believable than the 28 degree or 38 degrees Celsius that we had started at before. But our end temperature was considerably higher at 63 degrees Celsius. Now, I went ahead and I did one more test because I really wanted to see what happened if I did 1080p at 120 frames a second. This one was a little difficult because the camera would actually only record in about 10-minute increments. I'm not entirely sure why. My guess is because that it's taking the 120 frames a second and actually converting it to 30 frames a second. You're basically getting out a 30-minute clip at 30 frames a second. So I think it's slowing down the footage automatically instead of giving you a 30-minute clip that is at 120 frames a second, it's recording for 10 minutes and putting that into a 30-minute clip at 30 frames a second, and then you can just reinterpret it however you want, I assume. It's definitely not the way I expected them to do it, but they're doing something along those lines, it seems. Anyhow, we started at 27 degrees Celsius and recorded so we did 5 clips. I had to keep restarting it, so we recorded for 50 minutes or more. I would expect you to be able to get well over 50 minutes because at the end of this, our temperature was only up to 42 degrees Celsius. So the good news is this camera looks like for 1080p, it should pretty well be able to record indefinitely. Now, the only thing that I have not yet been able to find on the EOS R6 is whether or not the 1080p is oversampled. And I'd really like to have an answer to this question because to me, if you can get oversampled 1080p in this camera and not have overheating, that is perfect for the scenario I'm wanting to use it in. Now, as it pertains to the overheating, there are 2 things that I've read recently that I think it's important to highlight and note. Now, the first comes from Petapixel. They reported on a test that was done with the overheating. Someone set up infrared cameras and everything and did a bunch of tests. One of the things that they noted and that I think is important to take into consideration is the actual components that are used in the manufacture of the R5 and the R6. So they noted that the area around the card slots approached 60 degrees Celsius and such, and in part of their report, they note, so a little bit into it, they say all this is important to consider because 60 degrees is approaching an important operating temperature cutoff for some of the chips inside. So although maybe the image sensor chip and the processor might be able to reach those temperatures just fine, there are other chips inside the camera that can't. So as this person explains, though not a chip guy, but according to their FAQ, the Toshiba voltage converting chips have a suggested maximum operating temperature of 60 degrees Celsius before they dramatically lose efficiency. And less efficiency means generating more heat. And so with the CFX card slot at 57 and internal temperature sensor at 61, things are shutting down. That's probably about where you do want it to shut down. As soon as those chips start losing efficiency, they're going to generate more heat, and things are basically just going to cascade and get hotter and hotter and hotter. And, if efficiency is going down, that means, power usage is probably going to go up and stuff. Your battery's going to drain quicker. So there's one thing that I think is definitely important to note is that the chips themselves, there may actually be some chips inside that cannot handle those temperatures efficiently. Perhaps they can operate at above that, but it's probably not a good idea. Now, the second thing that I saw yesterday, someone finally got a interview with a Canon representative, and we're talking to them about the R5 and R6. And one of the things that they note is something that I've actually experienced before, and it's not something that I'd really considered until I read this. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from here. This was found on Canon News. It looks like Cindy D was able to talk with Canon Europe's product managing director of image communication business. Now, I find this rather pertinent, rather applicable. So in this interview, they're talking about the overheating, and he says, "We've been a big proponent that there is more going on than what some internet engineers are taking into account, and one of them has to do with the fact that you simply cannot grip securely an object over the temperature of 48 degrees Celsius for very long. You can and will burn. Even a relatively low increase of that temperature into the mid-50s can cause some serious harm to your skin and severe pain. Severe pain is not something I want in my stills camera." A little bit later down, Canon's Natsuki Nagi-san states that low temperature burns are something that Canon is taking into consideration. And he says that holding a very warm object for an extended period has the potential to result in what is known as low temperature burns. Secondary is to protect the internal components of the camera from overheating. We limit how hot the external body of the camera can get to protect users, which is one of the causes of overheat shutdowns. Some heat management must also be applied to ensure the camera continues to operate. Now, several years ago, while I was still in college, I wound up suffering from what I would consider a low temperature burn from my cell phone. I was in the testing center, I tried to turn my phone off, and it wound up boot looping and getting rather hot inside my pockets. And that part of my leg now where my phone was sitting is rather sensitive from time to time. I can no longer keep my phone in that pocket because it just makes my leg tingle and feel weird. So low temperature burns are definitely a thing. It's something that I've experienced, and it's definitely something that I do not want to experience again, especially on my hands. It would just be awful to get a low temperature burn on my hand. And part of what happens is, with high temperature burns, you've got a lot of heat that transfers really quickly, and you get stuff like second degree, third degree burns. But low temperature burns, they happen at lower temperatures, but over a sustained period of time. And they can actually do about the same amount of damage as second degree burns. And you wind up getting many of the same things going on at a cellular level. So with that all taken into consideration, it looks like we do have some overheating problems. Times are improving. But if you're doing video and such, hand holding for long periods of time looks like something that you want to steer away from, even if your camera is allowing you to continue to record for that long. But for me, myself, I'm probably going to stick in the 1080p range for now. And it looks like for that, the R6 is going to be functioning great. I do still want to find out if this is oversampled or not. Either way, I do get to shoot in 10-bit now. I can shoot in C-Log, so I'm definitely getting some new things to play around with. I'm pretty excited, and I'm excited to keep comparing it and looking at how the upgrade stacks up over an ADD. So I'll be digging into that a bit more. I'll have a video on that sometime in the future, looking at the ADD versus the R6 as an upgrade. So keep your eyes out for that. Go ahead and subscribe. If you aren't subscribed yet, hit the like button if you liked this video and found it informative. And I'll be coming at you with more content. See you guys later.